Hello everyone and welcome to my adventures. Now I know it's been quite some time since I did one of these, but I'm back and I'm here in the lovely little village of Acton Burnell.
In the Middle Ages, Acton Burnell was owned by the Burnell family, having bestowed their family name upon the village in 1198. But rather than go through the entire family, we'll focus on one member of the Burnell family in particular, who's famous with this location: Robert Burnell. Robert Burnell was born in 1239 and was actually born in Acton Burnell. He worked as a clerk of the Chancery before moving to the household of Prince Edward. By 1257, Robert was spending most of his time with the Prince and his household. In December of 1264, he was named the Prince's clerk, as well as being rewarded for his service. He was eventually named Archdeacon of York in 1270, after also holding the office of Chancellor to Edward up until 1270, when Edward left on crusade.
With Edward away on crusade, Burnell was appointed one of 4 lieutenants to look after Edward's interests at home whilst he was away. But whilst performing this duty, King Henry III died, which meant that Robert had to act as one of the regents of the kingdom until Edward returned to take the throne as King Edward I in 1274. But it was Burnell's time, being regency, dealing with raids on the Welsh borders, supervising Parliament and resolving a trade conflict with Flanders, that ensured his dominance in English government after Edward's return. During the first half of Edward I's reign, Robert Burnell was the chief and most influential of the King's advisors. Now this is evident from the fact that Edward's major legislative acts date to the time of Robert being the Chancellor. Now whilst Robert was the Chancellor, he tried to help King Edward reassert royal rights under the writs of Quo Warranto, which were first issued in 1278. They did try to pass it through Parliament, but this failed because it was too much work for the body. As well as this, Robert was also active in the King's foreign policy, dealing with France, Scotland and Wales, undertaking a number of missions to these countries, and also on occasion serving as the royal spokesman. Sadly, on the 25th of October in 1292, Robert passed away, leaving his many estates and his fortune to his nephew and heir, Philip Burnell. But here, where we stand, in this impressive country home, was one of the homes that Philip inherited.
Acton Burnell Castle itself was rebuilt along with the nearby church between 1270 and 1280. In 1283, the King came here to hold a session of Parliament, an event which assumed national significance because this was supposedly the first time at which commoners were represented. All of which happened in the Teeth Barn nearby, the only building large enough to hold such an event. In 1284, Robert obtained a licence from the King to fortify his residence, a process believed to have still been in progress after his death in 1292. However, the fact that the Manor House was fortified doesn't mean all that much, as it's not believed to have had a serious defensive purpose, but perhaps designed more to impress, which is suggested by the large first floor windows. The true extent of this estate is not known, because much of the building has been destroyed and the rest remains undiscovered. However, it would have to have been a substantial enough building to accommodate King Edward and his retinue, as well as his advisors and his soldiers. Also, the fact that the king stayed here would seem to suggest that it was quite a luxurious place too. After Robert's death, the estate was passed down through the family, up until it was abandoned in 1420 and was allowed to decay. Not long after, via marriage, it was owned by the Lavelles of Titchmarsh, but was confiscated by King Henry VII in 1487 after the Battle of Stoke Field, who then granted the land to Thomas Howard, 2nd Duke of Norfolk. And by the time it passed to the Smythe family in the mid-17th century, the castle had been largely demolished.
All that remains here now is a graceful red sandstone shell, diligently cared for by English heritage, for us all to enjoy and admire, a still impressive example of a fortified manor house. But this place is so much more important because this is where the common people were represented in Parliament for the very first time. And all it took was King Edward I, his loyal friend Robert Burnell, and an impressive estate full of history. It's been really quite something to be here. So it's time to go and find my next adventure. So I'll see you there.